Give them just another moment to join before we get started.
Why are we not seeing Holly or Ken?
They must not have their cameras on yet. There she is.
Okay.
There's Ken. No pressure to have your camera on, Ken.
I like to keep a low profile until the meeting starts.
Looks like we've got Commissioner Clark in the attendees.
All right, I'm trying to monitor it, but all right, let's see here.
Okay. Well, we'll let Commissioner Shrewsbury join us in process. All right, we will go ahead and call this meeting of the Planning Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian to order at 7:01. This meeting is being held virtually in accordance with Governor's Executive Order 2020-75 regarding the Open Meetings Act. We will come first to public remarks. There are going to be 5 opportunities for public remarks this evening. The first at the beginning of the meeting, the second at the end of the meeting, and 3 when we get to agenda item 6. There are 4 items listed under public hearings. We are going to be holding A and B at the same time, so that's why there are 3 opportunities under that agenda item. At the first and the final public remarks, you can speak to the Planning Commission on any topic. We ask that, or you are required, I guess, to speak to the topic at hand if you choose to speak during the public hearing section. So speak only on those topics. And with we will remind folks that public remarks are to be limited to 3 minutes. And for those of you who are joining from home who would like to call in to offer public remarks, the phone number is 517-349-1232. Be patient with us as we connect you. It may take a moment, but we will make sure to offer opportunities for you to speak to us. So with that said, we'll go ahead and move into public remarks. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Oh, I should mention, if you'd like to speak from the Zoom meeting, go ahead and use the raise hand feature so that our staff can see that you are looking to weigh in on a particular topic at a particular time.
Perfect. Yeah, so if people want to raise their hand in the Zoom interface, Mr. Menser will allow them to talk one at a time. We do already have a caller in on the public line. If you're ready, I'm going to transfer him in.
We are ready. If you would, please, caller, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Caller, would you please state your name and address for the public record? And you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Stephen Bezbeck, and I'm with my wife, Pat, here. Can I be heard? Is my audio working well?
It sounds
It
good.
is. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I live at 2020 Gravy, and I wish to comment about the rezoning request for the parcel that's on Okemos Road by Mr. Ho. I believe that is to go from RA to RAA. And a couple of things concern me. Number one, I read the application, and it states several times in the application that currently the property has a single family home on it. But I'm not sure that there's just a single family living there. There's 3 sets of utility meters on it. So I don't know if there are multiple families there and if that's the situation that's permitted for that piece of land. But nevertheless, it is proposed that it would go to something with more density. And the way that the comments were written up in the assessment by the township, it looks as though there could be additional lots made with frontage on Okemos Road. because with RAA, the 90-foot width would permit several extra lots versus the 200-foot width of frontage that's required for the current zoning. So I'm not sure whether the applicant is asking for 3 narrow lots that would be the full depth of that property, over 4 acres that currently would be divided up into 3 pieces, or if he's asking for something else, because in the application assessment by the township, there's also some discussion of whether or not it could be replatted. As was mentioned, it was originally lot 61 of Pleasant Acres that was platted in 1946. So I don't know if there's some discussion of replatting it after this, whether or not if it receives the RAA zoning, if it would be allowed to be replatted, or whether or not they would still have to respect the 90-foot frontage on Okemos Road. So that's one kind of question. The other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that my property lies downhill from that property, and I have some wetlands on my property that seems to be underwater more than it used to be with all the additional development. When the Pine Creek condominiums were put in by the Mulder Development Company in the 90s, our yard stayed underwater more than it had, and I've been on this property on and off since 1956. So I have some history of knowing how far the water usually extends, and I have 3 maples on that piece of land. They're currently underwater, that have been there for over 30 years, and right now they're not doing so well. I'd like, go ahead.
You have about 30 seconds left, please.
Well, anyway, the additional traffic and the additional hardship that our homeowners along Raby Road would face from the additional development is something I'd rather not see. So I put me down as opposed to this without some additional questions being answered.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, do we have anyone else on the phone?
There is no one else on the line calling in 517-349-1232 at this time, but I do see a couple of, or at least one hand raised in the panelists that Peter could enable to speak if they wanted to.
Okay.
Yep, so there's someone on here named Kelly, stay with me. So I'm gonna promote Kelly to talk, or allow Kelly to talk. So here you go, Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to call in or I
You can do either method is fine.
Okay, well, my name is Kelly Bartell and my property butts up to the back of the lot that's being under decision right now. And I'm just basically calling in to understand more. Once I dialed in, I could see that we had access to the application, so I did not review more in detail online here. So I was really just getting on to learn more, but to express my concerns as well. I'm not crazy about the building of what's happening or what he's proposing to do. I appreciate Steve Besdick being on. He's my neighbor. He's lived in this area. This was my grandfather's home that I purchased. So I've only been here about 10 or 12 years. But I just wanted to, if there was a vote, I wanted to vote no, plain and simple. And I'm just expressing I just don't want to see this happen, I guess. I mean, everybody has a right to their property and things, but I just hate to see it happen. So I don't really have much for comment. I just wanted to at least express my concerns and to really hear from more of an educational piece of what he's planning to do or what you are, deciding for him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Make sure you raise your hand if you're in the Zoom meeting, or you can call 517-349-1232.
I'm not seeing anybody else in our attendees list with a hand raised.
And there are no outbound calls at this time either, Mr. Menser. Sorry to interrupt.
No, we got 27 people in our list and no hands.
Okay, very good. Then we will move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Primo. Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Trezise. Are there any changes or additions or subtractions to the agenda? Yes, Commissioner Cordell.
I was just wondering if the last public hearing could be moved up, it might go a little quickly. It would be, let's see. It's
Agenda
D,
item 6D.
it's the Potter Street.
You'd like to move that up to the top of 6?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Primo, I guess that would be to you to decide if that's a friendly amendment to the minutes. Or to the agenda, rather.
Commissioner Cordell, could you give me the rationale, please?
I think it could be a shorter issue with this. It's something that we were looking at to rezone before, and A and B are a little more involved applications.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Can I get a sense of the commission? Are we all set with that? Is that a fine change? All right, we will consider that a friendly amendment, and we'll move 6D up to 6A and move everything else down 1. So we'll go in the order of, if you're looking at the numbers, it's going to be rezoning 20030, followed by a public hearing on 20011 and 20021, and then a third public hearing on 20010. So hope you can keep track of all that. We'll go ahead and I'll renumber my sheet so I've got it listed here. And we will take a vote on approval of the agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda passes. We'll move next into the approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve this evening for the May 18th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Clark. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner McConnell. Any amendments or changes to the minutes, Commissioner Clark? No. Anyone else? Commissioner Primo?
I think that under 1, he was at Chair Lane still, or I think it's Henderson. It's supposed to be Chair Henderson under number
Which
1.
page?
It's the called the meeting to order, and also in the adjournment, we are still referencing Chair Lane.
We need
I will
that.
fix that.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to communications. We have none. And now we will move into public hearings. So we have changed the agenda a moment ago. If you just joined us, we'll first be taking up item 6D, rezoning number 20030, rezone approximately 0.1 acres located at 5937 Potter Street from C1 commercial to RN mixed residential. And we will open the public hearing at 7:13 p.m. And we will turn things over to Principal Planner Menser whenever he's ready.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Menser. I'm the principal planner here at the township, work in the Department of Community Planning and Development for Mr. Kieselbach, who's somewhere on your screen, who's the director of our department. You're gonna be patient with me. I haven't done a lot of presentations on Zoom with the share screen thing, so I'm gonna work on that. But, and for those of you, I think everybody in our list was pretty much here for the end of public hearing, so that's been moved back. So any comments, when we open up public comments for the public hearing for that, will be a separate public hearing. So you'll be informed of that before we start that hearing. So let me pull up, forgive me because it's going to be awkward, but I have to find the file on my iPad here, so give me a second.
And while Peter's pulling up that file, I will note that there's a couple of the users, my own user as a panelist and also as an attendee, as the telephone number for public comment that can be used. at the appropriate public hearing if that's helpful to anyone.
Okay, has anyone seen this, my PowerPoint?
Yes, we are, Peter.
Okay, good, thanks. Well, I can't see you, appreciate that. So, okay, so let's start, and I'm gonna assume I'm talking to somebody, which is really strange to not be able to see anyone. For each of these public hearings, I just really brief PowerPoint presentations just to guide us so you have something, so it's not just looking at me for 10 minutes. What you're seeing on your screen right now is it's an announcement for the public hearing for the, sorry, my packet's all in the original order, so I gotta try to find where we. All right, so it's a public hearing rezoning 0.10 acre parcel. It's at 5937 Potter Street. The rezoning would be from C1 commercial to RN mixed residential. Some of you may remember this from I think it was earlier this year. We were approached by the owner of the property. They wanted to rezone the property, and they requested the planning commission. So the planning commission actually initiated the rezoning. So everything I'm going over tonight is on the meetings tab of the township website. I have a graphic in the other PowerPoint from the first public hearing we were going to hold that shows where that is, but I don't have it in this one because it's not in the right place. So everything is on the township website, meridian.mi.us. After tonight, it'll be in the planning commission section of the website. Format of the public hearing is a staff summary, which is what this is going to be. Presentation from the applicant. In this case, there is no applicant. Public comment, which is 3 minutes per person maximum, and this is specifically to the topic that we're discussing during the public hearing. The planning commission then will discuss the request amongst themselves. They may have questions for me. If there was an applicant, they may have questions for the applicant, which you'll see in the other public hearing. Keep in mind this public hearing and the rezoning, it's focused specifically on the rezoning, not development of the property. There's no specific development project proposed on this property. It's 0.10 acre. So you'll see it's not really conducive to anything of size anyways, but there's gonna be a separate process for that. So if someone wants to build a house on this property, that would go through the building department. It's not something the planning commission is gonna look at. So on your screen now is a map that shows the overall area in the, you get it, the area around the rezoning. It's marked in red. You can see it's nearby the Mayfair Bar and Bluegill Grill on west side of Potter Street. So it's 0.10 acre, 33 feet of frontage on Potter Street, currently zoned C1 commercial. They want to go to RN, which is our mixed residential category. It's currently zoned C1. That a lot of land over there was zoned C1. In several years ago, the planning commission looked at rezoning the whole area, and this specific property owner didn't want to be a part of that rezoning to residential. So this property stayed as commercial. Property has since changed hands, and the new owner can't really work with a C1 parcel. It's a non-conforming use, so it limits what they can do with the property, hence this request. Rezoning process overall, applications filed with our department, in this case, Planning Commission, initiated the rezoning. We post notices, so I sent a letter to everyone within 300 feet of this property, posted a sign on the site. We ran a legal notice in the newspaper. So there's overall, there's gonna be a public hearing, which is tonight, the Planning Commission. Planning Commission is gonna make a recommendation on the request, probably at your next meeting, or at the next meeting on June 22. From there, it goes to the Township Board. I don't have a meeting date for that, but we'll get one shortly thereafter. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation. Township Board with rezonings is the final decision maker. The Planning Commission in this case is just making a recommendation. They're advisory. And then it's a two-step approval process at the Township Board. They would, basically there's 3 meetings the board would talk about it. They talk about it once, then at their following meeting, they would have action. It would be on for what they call introduction. And then at the 3rd meeting, it would, final adoption would happen. And then it becomes part of the zoning map and in the rezoning changes. So 5937 Potter Street, right now there's an 816 square foot, 2-story house. It was built in 1921. You'll see if you're on the property today or recently, it's in state of disrepair. The new owners intend to improve it, and in planning to improve it, they found that there were issues with the zoning of the property. So the future land use map designates this property in the R3 residential, 1.25 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre. So this rezoning is consistent with the proposed, with the future land use designation. So you can see on the map right here, it's in red, it's yellow, which is the R3, and just to the north is pink, which is commercial. Current C1 zoning proposed for RN. Really, what do the zoning districts mean to us? In this case, particularly with residential, it refers to the minimum lot size, the minimum lot frontage, and then also the allowable land uses in the district. So current zoning C1 requires a minimum lot area of 4,000 square feet and 50 feet of frontage minimum. If rezoned to RN, that district requires 8,000 square feet and 65 feet of frontage. So you can see the zoning map, RN to the south, C1 to the north. And this one parcel is the one residential parcel that is on C1 in the area still. So this is just a comparison of the two standards for each district. On the left, you can see C1, so it has all the setbacks and lot area, lot width, maximum lot coverage, building area. You're just seeing a comparison to both districts. Township has review criteria for rezonings. They're in our township ordinance, but they're also on the rezoning application. So the Planning Commission and the board, they really need to consider all the uses that are by right and by special use permit in the current district and in the proposed zoning district. And then the reasons for rezoning that are listed on page 2 of the rezoning application. So the applicants, now granted there is no applicant in this case outside of the Planning Commission, and you'll see it on the other rezoning. That's the application kind of provides the applicant with an opportunity to go through and share reasons why they believe that the rezoning should be approved. And you'll see those as responses to the rezoning criteria in the application. The uses that are allowed by C1 really consist of personal service establishments, retail, restaurants, banks, offices. C1 is supposed to be a neighborhood level commercial district. Uses allowed in the proposed RN district include single family housing, duplexes by right, but then also multi-family dwellings at a maximum density of 14 units per acre. Now that would require a special use permit. Anything 3 units or above would require a special use permit from our Planning Commission. Also allowed in RN are non-residential uses in residential districts, also by special use permit. And some of those include clinics, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, churches, schools. So after the public hearing, further discussion and possible action would be at the June 22 Planning Commission meeting. Between now and then, no additional letters are going to be sent out. I will have a resolution prepared for consideration based on the discussion that's going to follow my presentation here with the Planning Commission. So as always, I'm available to answer questions tonight, after the meeting, in between meetings, and at the next meeting. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so ordinarily, this next period of time would be reserved for a discussion from the applicant. In this case, the Planning Commission initiated this rezoning, and so we will not have any discussion from the applicant on this, as we are the applicant. And so next up would be public comment. So we do have the ability to give the public 3 minutes each of public comment to be heard on this rezoning. Please note that if you are interested in offering public remarks at this time, you can, if you are in the Zoom meeting, use the raise hand function. And if you are listening at home, you can call in at 517-349-1232. So with that, and we do ask that everyone limit their remarks to 3 minutes. With that said, we will open up the public remarks for this public hearing. And we'll give everyone a moment to call in or raise their hand.
I don't have anyone on the screen.
And we have no
Steven,
calls
anyone?
coming in at this time either.
All righty, then we will move on to Planning Commission discussion. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So this is one that we talked about back in February, and I personally will be in support of it. As Peter mentioned, it was a rezoning that was started with other properties in the area, and changing the zoning of this particular property will put it in line with the surrounding area. So I believe that this rezoning is in order for this property. With that said, we do not vote in the same meeting that we hold a public hearing, for those who are unfamiliar with our public hearing process. However, we do generally take a straw poll of the planning commissioners so as to provide direction to Principal Planner Menser as he's preparing a resolution for us at our next meeting. So with that said, we will go ahead and take a straw poll rezoning this property. So we'll go ahead and start with Commissioner McConnell.
Yeah, I think it's unusual that you have an opportunity to rezone a parcel in accordance with the master plan. And the rationale in this case seems very sound to me. I'll support this.
Okay, Commissioner Primo. All right, Commissioner Cordell.
I'm in favor as well for the reasons Commissioner McConnell stated.
Commissioner Shrewsbury.
I'm supportive.
Okay, Commissioner Richards.
Support.
Commissioner Clark.
I would support.
Commissioner Trezise.
I support.
And Chair supports. All right, Peter, I think you've got some pretty clear direction there. If you would please prepare a resolution for our next meeting. All right, we will move on then to what is now item 6B and C, which is special permit number 20011, number 20-401-005, located at the east end of Hannah Boulevard. And concurrently with this public hearing, I should have said I closed the last public hearing at 7:27. Concurrently with 20011, we'll be running special use permit 20021 and of Group LLC to construct building greater than 25,000 square feet in size on an undeveloped parcel identified as parcel number 20-401-005, located at the east end of Hannah Boulevard. And with that, we will open the public hearing after Peter.
Okay, hello everybody. So this is the public hearing for special use permit 20011, 20021. We've separated them out. One is for the land use to develop or to establish a senior living community, and the other is for the size, a building greater than 25,000 square feet in size. So what I'm going to do is run through a very well-crafted PowerPoint presentation on the proposal. And so I'll share my screen and I'll go through it, and hopefully it'll be clear. The project will be clear. So give me 1 second here. Okay, can we see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Okay, so public hearing, like I said, we're running both these together tonight. I'm gonna go a little slower on this. So tonight's meeting packet is on Township website. If you're on the home page right now, it's on the meetings tab. So you can see it right, there's events, meetings, and news. You have to click on meetings and you'll find Planning Commission, virtual meeting. So at the very top, virtual televised Planning Commission meeting. You'll click on that, it's got a link to the meeting packet and the agenda. So you can follow along through everything that I've got. So all the application materials are on the township website. Hopefully you've all found that so far. I actually have a screenshot here. It's on the government tab of the website. Under at your fingertips, there's a button for current applications before Meridian Township. And on there, whoops, sorry. On there, you'll find everything. So that's the application that was filed with us, floor plans, building, site plan, building elevations, and a lot of different reports. So traffic, there's a natural feature study. Everything that they submitted that was required for the special use permit is posted on the website for consideration. So any questions about that, refer to that or let me know after the meeting. So the format of the public hearing, this is going to be different than the last one we just had because there are a lot of people here in the room. There is an applicant out that's not the township. So I'm going to provide this staff summary. You just saw a preview of that. Presentation, the applicant is in the room, virtual room. They're going to be speaking to this. Public comment. This is probably the most important part for you, for anyone watching. 3 minutes per person maximum. It's on this specific topic. So anyone that tuned in tonight to watch that, to learn about the ANDAV proposal, this is your time. And then after public comment, planning commission discussion, they'll talk amongst themselves. They may have questions for me. They may have questions for the applicant. You'll see all of that happening during that time. So like I said, everything's on this current applications portion of the website. If you want to see the floor plans, building site plans, all that stuff. I think everybody knows what we're talking about, but this is an area map. It just shows, so what you're not seeing is Hagedorn Road to the west. The Hagedorn Road goes in, and you know the Hannah Shopping Center where Pizza House is, and a lot of your favorite stores and restaurants. You can see on the map, I've identified the MAC, Suburban Ice, the Lodges of East Lansing. There's 2 phases, the one on the north and one on the south of Hannah Boulevard. To the east of that, you're seeing a very large parcel in red. Give me 1 second to catch up to my presentation here. So we are looking, that whole red area is about 58 acres. We are going to be looking at 10.73 acres. It's approximately in the area, the area of the blue X you're seeing on your screen. So it's not that entire piece, but there's a part in the middle where this is being proposed, and the site plans show better exactly what it is. So what the proposal is to construct what's called a senior living community, and we'll get into that in more detail a little bit. It's 230 units, 267,000 square foot building, 1 building in multiple wings. It would be a mix of assisted living, memory care, and independent living units. And the requirement to qualify to live there is 55 years and older. As part of this project, I'm sorry, but it is approximately 10.73 acres of a larger 58-acre parcel. Part of the project would also be to extend Hannah Boulevard further east and construct a cul-de-sac to serve the development. And what you're seeing on the plan here, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but this plan is looking into the future. So you see Hannah Boulevard coming from the west, and it curves up to the north and has a cul-de-sac. So the building is just to the east of that new stretch of Hannah. So I'm not going to pause on this for very long because it's all in the materials that are on the website, and you can look at it at another time. What you can see on this plan, I don't know if you're seeing it in where you're at, but the east side, there are 2 phases to it. So the east side would be phase 1. There's a phase line kind of right through the building where it says proposed building. There's a phase line. So you see phase 2 on the left and phase 1 on the right. The The plan is they build phase 1 first, phase 2 second, and I'll get into more detail on that. In the application materials, you'll see there were building elevations provided. This is just a shot out of one of them, just to give you an idea of what it generally is going to look like. So the overall process, I want to make sure everybody understands this. Well, applications filed with our department. In this case, an application was filed quite some time ago, before we had the pandemic. It was actually a public hearing initially scheduled for March 16, and we all know what happened with that. But now thankfully we're able to get this on we sent out new notices. We're able to get another public hearing scheduled. So initially the application is filed with our department. We send notices out in accordance with state law. So everybody within 300 feet gets a letter, post legal ad in the newspaper, and we post a sign on the site itself. So tonight, June 8th, is the public hearing with our Planning Commission. That's what's happening right this minute. Planning Commission decision on the request will likely come at the Planning Commission's next meeting on June 22. That's not a guarantee, and the discussion that's going to follow this presentation is going to tell you more about where we're going next with this. But the Planning Commission meets next on June 22. That's on Monday night, same time, 7 o'clock. And as far as I know, it's going to be via Zoom unless something changes. So let me catch up in my staff memo just to make sure that I'm in the right spot here, because I'm kind of going quick. So for those of you that were around and aware of this, in 2019, the Township Board initiated a zoning amendment to allow what we're calling senior living communities to be in residential districts. So it would be as a use, what we call in our ordinance as a non-residential use in a residential district. It's a use that is approved by special use permit by the Planning Commission. So what that did was allow these types of developments, not this specific development, but these types, senior living communities, which there is a definition. We define it as a facility comprised of a building or a group of buildings providing a continuity of residential occupancy and health care for elderly persons. So it includes, these types of facilities include dwelling units for independent living, assisted living, and memory care or other licensed professional care for residents. And it also could include ancillary facilities for further service or care of the residents. It's 55 years and older, or married couples or domestic partners where spouses or partners are 55 years or older. So the township adopted an ordinance so that these types of developments could come in and they'd be by special use permit as this non-residential use. So the zoning amendment was adopted. Now we're here, we have a project, and we're with the Planning Commission doing the special use permit process. So there's 2 special use permits under consideration right now. One is for the land use. It's to establish this non-residential use, the senior living facility community. But also there's a special use for the size of the building. So in this case, the Planning Commission makes the decision on the land use. The Township Board will make the final decision on size. So we'll hold the public hearing, and after the Planning Commission makes a decision on size, on the land use, there will be additional steps where this project will then go on to the Township Board for discussion. So after all that happens, let's say, and I'm not insinuating anything will or won't happen in this case, but let's say the project special use permit is approved. It would then go on to what we call site plan review, and that's a process led by our planning staff, me, and our planning development team, and we include, that includes our fire department, our engineering department, our building division. Everybody gets involved. And at that point, we're getting into kind of the really detailed points of the project. So it's confirmation of agency approvals. That includes review and approval by the county drain office. I know there's a lot of questions about drainage on this property. A lot of that is going to be tackled during the site plan review process. You'll see complete plans. You'll see feedback from the drain office. But also you'll see during site plan review is really a detailed review of utilities as well. Because you'll notice everything I talk about, there's not a lot of talk about utilities and logistics. It's more about land use and the siting of the building on the property and adjacent uses. So let's get into some of the maps. Future land use map. identifies this property as R2 residential 0.5 to 3.5. Zoning, property is zoned RAA. RAA does allow, as a residential district, it does allow for these special use permits for non-residential uses. No change to the zoning is proposed or required. Floodplain, anybody that's in the area probably understands that there is floodplain on this property. What you're seeing is my map. So this is actually a map from FEMA. The gray is floodway fringe, and the hash mark is floodway. So the detailed site plan that's in the meeting packet and posted on the township website has very specific, this map is pretty correct. The one I'm showing on screen right now, it's pretty close, but you'll see the site plan itself has the actual surveyed boundaries of the the floodplain on the site. So for a more detailed look and a map that'll show it, the site plan shows the context of the buildings and the floodplain. What I can tell you is and you'll see for yourself, there is no development proposed in the floodplain. There are wetlands on the property. I've got wetlands labeled A through H. There is a wetland delineation report prepared by a company called Marks Wetlands LLC that is in the meeting packet. And the process for that, so anytime a parcel is proposed for development that includes wetlands, general process is either they can hire the township's wetland consultant to go delineate the site. So they literally walk onto the site, they test soils, they look at vegetation, they look at hydrology, and they flag and mark the wetlands, the physical boundaries of each wetland. So if the township's consultant doesn't do the work, if a developer has their own consultant do the work, which is absolutely allowed, it has to be verified by the township's wetland consultant. So it's really a two-step process in that case. So what happened here was Marks Wetlands did the delineation, but the report had to be verified by the township wetland consultant. So that means our wetland consultant, and we use a firm called Fishbeck out of Grand Rapids, they actually go to the site and do the exact same thing. So they go to the site, they meet the applicant's consultant typically they'll meet together on the site and they'll review it together and they'll go through the flags. Sometimes, some flags may move. The consultants may disagree with each other. Very rarely does that happen. But in this case, we've got a wetland map. It's been delineated, it's been verified. So it's we know that these are where the wetlands are. And what you're seeing on the presentation right now is my very poor attempt to recreate the boundaries of each of the wetlands, because PowerPoint doesn't give a lot of graphic, or I don't have a good program for graphics. So what I've done is just taken what's in the site plan and just drawn it freehand. So please don't take this too seriously. But the map in the site plan shows it a lot better. And ultimately, what you're going to see is there are 8 wetlands, each of different size. 6 of the 8 wetlands are regulated by the township and by the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which is called EGLE. It used to be called MDEQ, now EGLE. So the applicant's proposing to fill wetland F. You'll see right in the middle there, wetland F. It's 0.04 acres in size, and it is not regulated. Therefore, the applicant can fill this wetland without further review, without a permit from either the state or the township. They're allowed to do that. And then also, let's see here. There's a table in the staff memo that shows the size, the delineated size, the regulatory authority, and then the required setback from each of these wetlands. I'm not going to go through all those right now. You can find them in the staff memo. But long story short, there are no development activities proposed that are going to require a wetland use, at least at this time, a wetland use permit or any work in any regulated wetland. Township has a green space plan. You'll see there's in the staff memo, there's just a brief section on the green space map, but you can see there's a priority conservation corridor through kind of the middle portion of the site, or excuse me, the southern portion of the site. There's no development right now proposed in the southern portion of the site. And in fact, if you go back to the floodplain map, you'll see that area is not, it's located in the floodplain and very difficult to develop. Certainly not proposed at this time. I'm going to run through some of the elements in the traffic or in the staff analysis. So traffic, you'll see there's a letter provided. The traffic study in this case was not required, and that's based on the AM and PM peak volumes. There's a certain threshold that traffic has to meet. In this case, it has to be 100 additional directional trips during morning and afternoon peak hours of traffic. So based on the land use and based on the potential traffic generation, a study or assessment was not required in this case. 189 spaces, parking spaces required, 227 are proposed. And then public utilities, we'll get into public utilities in detail during site plan review, but there are public utilities in the area. The buildings along Hannah Boulevard are served by township water and sewer. So they would need to be extended to the site to serve it. Right now, we're not at the point where, where exactly and when that would be happening, but when it does happen, the township engineering department will be working with the applicant to determine the best place for all the utilities and that there is capacity for the new project. So if you get into the ordinance that was passed in 2019 on senior living facilities or senior living communities, there were a couple different aspects of the ordinance that the project has to meet to qualify, and I wanted to go over a couple of those. One of those is density. So the ordinance allows up to 25 units per acre. DU, you see the DU/A, it's dwelling units per acre allowed. So the applicant's proposing 230 units on 10.73 acres. That comes out to 21.4 dwelling units per acre. So it meets that criteria. There's also a maximum ratio of independent living to licensed professional care ratio. So the idea here was, in the ordinance at least, was that we didn't want to allow for just independent living, so just apartments. There has to be this component of licensed professional care. So in this case, it has to be, well, in general, it has to be, maximum can be 2 to 1. So you can't have more than twice the number of this memory care and assisted living. So we've got 121 independent living units and 109 memory care / assisted living units proposed. So it is below that maximum 2 to 1 ratio. Also, these types of projects, we allow accessory uses, and right now they're proposing at least a dining facility, salon, a medical clinic, and a chapel are proposed for use at the site, and those are for use of the people in the building and visitors, guests. So there were a couple other things. Setbacks adjacent to residential property line. Buildings 35 feet or less in height can be no closer than 50 feet to a residential property line. Setback is that 35 feet, or excuse me, that 50 feet is increased 1.5 feet for every foot the building exceeds 35 feet in height. So at its tallest point, and it's not the entire building, but at its tallest point, the building is 52 feet 4 inches tall. So that would require a 76-foot setback from the north, east, and southern property lines. And you'll see that is being met. The current slide just shows you some additional criteria that's required in the senior living community ordinance. So that's minimum lot area, 10 acres. This site is just above that at 10.73 acres. Minimum lot width, 100 feet. Ultimately, this site would have, once Hannah Boulevard is extended, would have 300 feet plus of frontage. Maximum building coverage can be no more than 35% of the parcel. In this case, they're proposing it at 19%. And then the front yard setback is 25 feet, and they have 90 feet. They're actually 90 feet away from the front yard setback. And then maximum building height is 60 feet. At its very tallest, it's 52 feet. And it's actually not that height is not throughout the entire building. A couple other issues I think are important to bring up now. Emergency access road on the site plan, you'll see there's a access road that goes up to the northwest, or heads northwest, and ultimately would connect to the parking lot at the lodge's phase 1. That emergency access road is required by our fire code. And in this case, it's going to be required to be completed at when the project begins. So, and then the township would have to have a cross-access agreement and easement required to so that that's established and set in stone. Phasing, I mentioned earlier, this development is proposed in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be the memory care assisted living. That's 109 units. Phase 1 would also include the construction of the Hannah Boulevard extension and the construction of an emergency access road. Phase 2 would be the rest of the building, which is 121 independent living units. Review criteria. So for special use permits, there is general standards. There are 9 items that are listed in our special use permit review criteria for the planning commissioners to use in making their decision. But also we're going to use the standards related to the senior living community ordinance. And a lot of those I just went over. Those are related to density, the ratio of units, setbacks, height, etc. So those are all things that we just went through in previous slides. So what's next? Further discussion and potential action at the June 22 meeting. So like I said, Monday, June 22, 7 o'clock, probably on Zoom. You will not receive any additional notices or letters before that meeting. The only thing you will notice is we'll post the agenda and meeting packet on the township website in the same spot that the one that's there for tonight's meeting. So I will be preparing a resolution for consideration at the next meeting based on the discussion to follow my presentation here amongst the planning commissioners. So as always, planning staff, I'm available for questions pretty much any time between now and then, either follow up for the public hearing and then before, the next meeting. And my contact information is all over the township website if you're looking for me. And then if you do plan to submit any kind of written document or written communications, the Planning Commission has an email. It's planningcommission@meridian.mi.us. And you can send communications to that email address. I'll need all those by Thursday, June 18 at 5, just because logically we need to prepare a meeting packet and get it posted. So I've got to have some kind of deadline. So it'll be Thursday the 18th at 5. So that's the Thursday before the meeting on that Monday, the 22nd. So I know I threw a lot out there. There's a lot more information in the staff memo that's in the packet. I tried just to hit the high points. If you have any questions for me, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I believe I heard you say earlier that we do have a representative of the applicant here in our waiting room. So at this point, it would be appropriate to hear from the. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So thanks. We've got. I understand Mr. Mark Klaus, who some of you might know, wanted to introduce at least the applicant, and he is on our line, and I'm going to find him.
He does have his hand up now, I think.
Yep, I got him. So, Mr. Klaus, I've pushed the allow to talk button, so you can speak whenever. And remember, you're on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Good evening. This is Mark Klaus, and I'm speaking on behalf of the property owner, the George Ide Family LLC. As many of the planning commissioners, or maybe some of you will remember, and as I'm looking across the screen and seeing your faces, perhaps you won't remember this because it was so long ago. In 2008, I believe it was, our company came to the township and requested a rezoning and an overlay PUD on the property to the west of this site. And over that time period, we discussed not only the PUD site, but the property that before you this evening. And during that time, both the Planning Commission, the Township Board, and our consultants, our dream was to have a senior community on this parcel. If you go back to the minutes and the discussions during that time, you'll see that was kind of a thought from everyone's standpoint. It was not included in the overall PUD because we were looking at multifamily and commercial zoning on that parcels to the west. But it's taken 12 years. We've had a couple of false starts, but this one we've been working on now for almost 2 years with the ANDEV group. And we're very pleased. Not only have they come to the township, but they have brought a plan and a concept that is outstanding. Will be a great addition to the township, both for the seniors living in our community currently and bringing people that are over 55 to live in our community. I've had the pleasure of working with this group, as I said, for about 2 years now. Dunn Anbar is the principal of the ANDEV group. He has a great team with him. I'm not quite sure who all's in the meeting tonight because it's hard for me as a spectator to see who's here. And since we're not sitting in the room like we used to do, it's kind of hard for me to look across the room and see. But I know their counsel, Michael Samuels, is probably with us this evening, and I'm sure Dunn is as well. I know that Jeff Keyes from Kebs Incorporated, who worked with us on most of the property that we have there at the Hannah site, is working with them on this project as well. And so as owners of the property, we certainly welcome them, and I encourage you to welcome them to the community as well. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Peter, were you suggesting that there was another representative of the applicant that was going to be speaking as well, or are you muted, Peter? Peter, you're still muted. Sorry.
Sorry, I've got to like go back 3 screens to unmute myself and then go into where these participants are. My apologies. So Mike Samuels is on the call. He's the applicant, and I'm going to find him. And he has his hand up, and now he is being granted the ability to speak.
Thank you. Mr.
Okay.
Samuels,
Can you hear me?
we can.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Samuels, and I am here on behalf of ANDEV Group, which is the developer of the property, and should be with me, because I can't see anybody either. Also with me from our team tonight should be Don Anbar, who is the principal of the ANDEV Group, and he will speak a little bit about ANDEV and its history. We have Ben Ganther and Ken Kozakowski from Ganther Construction Architecture, and they will be available to go over the plans and cover any questions that anybody has about the building itself. And as Mark Klaus mentioned, Jeff Keyes from Kebs Engineering is with us tonight also, and he'll be able to address any concerns regarding the engineering, the civils, the stormwater issues, etc. Peter did a very good job of introducing the project. I don't know. I can't share a screen, can I, Peter? Or do you want us to? Or
You don't have to. I can grant you, I believe, the ability to do that.
okay.
You want to promote him to a panelist if you want him to be able to share a screen, Peter.
Or
Yep.
you can, or if you want to put it up, Peter, we can do it that way. Either way, or one of the commissioners.
I'll let, if you have something you want to show, I'll let you do it. So I'm going to
Well, I
promote
was
you
just
to
going to show the site with the a little bit more fleshed out for everybody.
Okay, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. So welcome to the panel, and then I'll grant you the ability to do that as well.
Actually, the panelists, as long as you enable screen sharing, all panelists should be able to share simultaneously.
Okay, I'm trying to figure that out right now.
You're going to control those features.
Yep.
By pressing them.
I got it. All right, so you can share your screen now, Mr. Samuels.
Okay, it looks like it's working. Now I have to find the share. Let's try this one. Okay, can everybody see?
Yeah, thank you.
The plan? As Peter indicated, let me make this a little bigger here. As Peter indicated, we are looking to construct the building in 2 phases. The memory care section in the front, the assisted living section in the back. The memory care building is 2 stories. The assisted living building is 3 stories. And the building that will be built in the future, the independent living building along the east side of the property, I'm sorry, the west side of the property, would be 4 stories. And that's where that 53 feet, 54 feet of height, building height, is applicable. It's only on the western portion of the property. As he indicated, we will be building an extension of Hannah Boulevard along the west side of the property and terminating that into a cul-de-sac. I don't know if it can be seen easily, at least from this, but there is a pathway that leads north off of the top of the key for the cul-de-sac. And that would be an emergency access. That's what Peter was talking about, granting the county emergency access to provide additional routes for emergency vehicles, fire and other emergencies. Parking is displayed around the property. Let me think. We will have all the accessory uses that normally go along with assisted living in both buildings available to all of the residents in both buildings. Meals are always provided for all of the residents. And we can answer questions as far as that's concerned. I think people pretty much understand what assisted living consists of. I can fill that in if you like, but I don't want to go into that directly. And let's see, I think we really should open it up to questions. I don't know specifically what people are interested in learning about this. As Peter mentioned, this follows the ordinance that was enacted last year, which we looked forward to because this project could not have been built without that ordinance. And the reason was that the independent living building would not have been able to have full kitchens. The independent living building is for independent seniors, and they're full apartments. They are not what you might think of assisted living apartments as being small and more towards efficiency. The independent living apartments are full-sized apartments, and they have full kitchens. And so when that ordinance was proposed, we made certain that what we would design would be fitting within the parameters that the ordinance established. So as Peter described, all of the factors regarding building heights, setbacks, and every other criteria that was established by the ordinance has been respected in our design. Peter, do you want additional presentation from us specifically, or can we open this up to questions?
It's up to you guys. If you have other people that want to talk now, you can, or you can wait until we go from here into.
Well, can you unmute Jeff Keyes? Let's see if Jeff wants to speak at all in an introductory fashion, or if he'd prefer to just respond to people's questions, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions.
Do you know what username Jeff is under?
Oh, no. I don't know if he's at home or if he's at.
I don't see him under here by name.
Unless he's Moda E3, who just raised their hand when you mentioned it, but I can't say for sure.
All right, I'm going to mute myself, Peter, and I'll try calling him on the phone.
Okay.
Is that probably the best way to figure this out?
Sure.
Okay. How do I mute myself? Oh, there we go.
So we'll give him just a moment. And while we do, I guess this would be a fine time to mention that when the applicant has concluded and they are on the Zoom call, to please raise your hand using the raise hand feature. And if you are looking to participate in public remarks home, you can call into the phone number 517-349-1232. And if you'd please be patient with us, we are still working through this new world where everyone's reaching out to us in various ways. One more brief reminder, remarks are limited to 3 minutes. And if you could please start your remarks by stating your full name and address so the clerk can record your resident.
Peter, I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner Chairman. I was not able to reach Jeff Keyes. I only have his office number.
Okay.
Not his cell. Well, but why? I think that it would be a good idea. Why don't we let Dunn Anbar just introduce himself and say a little bit about the company and its history?
Oh, okay. I've got Jeff here. If you want to, do you want to go back to Jeff?
Well, like I said, either one. But why don't let's let Dunn go first, and because I think his will be very brief. It just but just to give a little background of the company and the product that we build.
Okay. Who am I looking for? Dunn Anbar?
Yeah, D-A-N.
There's a Dunn Emmett Anbar.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Dunn's on.
Dunn, you may have to unmute yourself. You do, in fact, have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. I am Dunn Anbar. I'm the principal of Antiv Group. And this reminds me being a kid in the 1990s watching Star Trek and saying, wow, one day will we ever be able to do this? Pretty amazing, actually. So we are senior housing developers and operators. We've been in this business for probably at least 20 years, primarily in Wisconsin and Illinois. We have built and developed over 30 projects. Some of them are all-inclusive of independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Some are standalone assisted living properties and memory care. We came across this property a couple of years ago because the market research group that we work with directed us to pursue projects that are adjacent to major universities. We met an extremely nice gentleman by the name of Mark Klaus, who has been supportive of our efforts here for the past couple of years now. And he introduced us to a very welcoming community in East Lansing. And as you know, we got a few delays. It's a complicated process to go through to design something like this. Just for your notification, we specialize in private pay communities, which I would say cater to the upper middle end to the higher end of the market. That ensures a high quality of care, which for us is the most important thing, because that's really what enshrines your longevity as a viable business. We think it's a wonderful location. We think it's a wonderful community. And we'd like to be part of it. I can, and by the way, just with us on the call is our design build firm, which is, the principal is Ben Ganther, and he has his architect with him who's in-house. And they've actually design built the overwhelming majority of our projects over these years. And they do an outstanding job in terms of the quality of what they do, finishing on time or before. We've never had any issues. Nobody believes me because everybody's had a nightmare story with their general contractor, but we haven't. So it's all good. I'm available to answer any questions you'd like, but I know it's probably everybody wants to get through this as quickly as possible and maybe address some technical questions that you may have for Jeff.
And I think at that it's appropriate that we do switch over to Jeff Keyes, who could speak a little bit about the engineering and stormwater.
Okay, well, I found Jeff.
Okay.
So thanks, Dunn. I'm gonna put Dunn back to, I'm gonna move him. So I'm bringing to you Mr. Jeff Keyes, local luminary. He has now the ability to speak. And you'll have to unmute yourself, Jeff.
All right. Am I on?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I put my email in. I never changed the name. So I'm Moto Z3, I think.
Yep.
So Peter went through some of the preliminary information. Right now with special use permit, we try to get enough information on there to make sure everything is going to work. We did submit to the road commission and drain office for their comments, but at this point there's no full design to actually review. So they weren't reviewing calculations of any type. They were just looking generally at the plan, which we did get those responses today from both of them without any major red flags at this point. I know the biggest question is going to be drainage in this area. It always is, and we've dealt with it a lot with all the other apartment complexes and all the attention we put in compensating cut. But during the site plan review process, we have to follow the drain office standards. They have design standards that we follow. They review it. Professional engineers review it. They have a three-step system on their stormwater. One is to clean the water. The other one is to keep some water on site to infiltrate. And the last one is the 100-year detention volume. So you're not increasing downstream or upstream. You're not adversely affecting anything. So, you know, when we get to that process is when you'll start seeing the true design of everything else. We did preliminary numbers just to make sure that what I'm showing for detention areas works, and we're confident that we can make that work. But it's our intent, every drop of developed water on the site is going to go into detention and go to the drain to the west. There's no water that's going to go off-site to the east. We have to protect that. We have to make sure that we drain it. If we, you know, we're putting a berm along that east side. If we block any drainage off, we'll have to put pipes in and pick that up. It's all part of the review process. Other than that, sanitary and water, they were stubbed for this purpose. They were already stubbed across the drain to the north side, and the sanitary going to follow that emergency path. That's where the sanitary is to serve this site. Water is going to loop all the way up through the road. Plus, it's got to loop around the building for the fire department. So I haven't seen any negative comments from anyone, and I'll be available for questions too. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I should add, and if need be, I can reshare that screen, but the plan, the landscape plan for the development does include a fairly large berm all along the eastern side of the property that basically that adjoins the development to the east, and then plantings on top of the berm is what's designed.
Anything else from the applicant's representatives?
Yeah, Mike, I've got Kevin on here with his hand up still. He's part of your team, right?
Ken, no, Ken Kozakowski would be, but we don't have a Kevin.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much to the applicant. We all appreciate that. We will now move into the public remarks section of the public hearing. So I said it before, I'll mention it again. If you would like to speak and you were in on the Zoom meeting, feel free to raise your hand, use the raise hand feature. If you'd like to call in, you can call us at 517-349-1232. Lines are open, so feel free to give us a call.
Yeah.
Peter, it looks like a couple of hands raised already, so let's
Yep,
go
I'm
ahead.
seeing them. So for everybody that's raising their hands, please be patient. We'll get to you. As I don't have a system to say my hand was up first or my hand was up second, so I'm gonna go with people I see. What I'll do is I've seen this Kevin on here, so I'm gonna go to him. Is Kevin gone? No, Kevin's gone. So I'll go to the first person on my list is David Lewis Skoll. So what's going to happen is I'm going to allow you to talk, and then you'll get 3 minutes. Be sure to unmute. You are going to start off muted, so you make sure to unmute yourself. So here comes David Lewis Skoll.
And also, please remember to state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is David Lewis Skoll. My address is 4845 Mohican Lane. And my property is abutting the project property, although not project site itself. So I have two concerns that I would like to address in the short time that I have. The first one is about the natural features survey, and the second is about water management. With regard to the natural features survey, I've looked at it, and I think it could use another second look, perhaps even a revision. It was done in about 4.5 years ago. It was done in November. It's a rather superficial report, and it has some glaring issues, in my opinion, that are not accurate. For instance, in section 4.12 about wildlife, it talks about ordinary urban and suburban wildlife species, and that wildlife such as these won't be significantly affected by the project. That's not true by my observation, living very close. I can document with certainty that we have identified juvenile bald eagles, pileated woodpecker, wood ducks, great horned owl, barred owl, prairie warblers, raven, fox, coyote, evidence of beaver, flying squirrels. In terms of botanicals, trillium is present, as well as bloodroot and marsh violet and some other very unusual species. It's indeed suburban, and it is in a suburban area, but it's not a ordinary, unimportant suburban habitat. And I think that's a tribute to the fact that it's very much part of a very extensive corridor throughout Okemos. And so you get a lot of residents and also transients coming through. So I think you really got to look at that natural features report again. Second point on water is that I have concerns that the site itself is essentially a virtual island surrounded by the 100-year flood. All the areas surrounding it are rated as AE, and on 3 sides, it's actually a regulated floodway. And so my first impression is, would you really want to put a senior center in the middle of this, especially when your own climate sustainability plan talks about one of the biggest impacts or concerns with climate change here in Meridian is flooding and increased occurrence of flooding. Now, the 100-year flood, where it's essentially being plopped down on top of, just about 10 feet above the flood zone itself. Let me just note that,
20 seconds, please.
Sure. The probability of a major flood over 30 years is about 30%. And, if you're a major league baseball player and you bat at 30%, you'd be a slugger. So that's not a rare thing. And if climate change is really going to be exacerbating things, I have concerns. And if you look at the historical record, this last flood we had 2 weeks ago was about the top 15 since 1920. And in 2018, we know we had serious flooding. That was the 3rd highest since 1920. So it's a concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, David. The next person I've got in my list is Mr. Joseph Pavona. So get ready, Joe. You're going to be coming along here in a second. And be sure to unmute yourself. So you should be able to speak now.
Okay, thank you. Am I coming through?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. As mentioned, I'm Joe Pavona, and I live at 4726 Arapahoe Trail here in Indian Lakes, and I also serve as the president of our homeowners association. And I think before offering my comments, I would just like to beg your forbearance and mention that I think almost everyone by now knows that our good friend and neighbor, as well as our legal counsel to our homeowners association, Mr. Jack Davis, has recently passed away. Jack was a trusted advisor. He guided our board for many, many years. He's a good guy who put community and family at his forefront, and we'll truly miss him. So thank you for allowing me to say that. Going forward, the Loomis firm will continue to represent us, and the board has approved Mr. Kevin Rorgan as our counselor. And I think that Mr. Rorgan is probably linked in to our meeting and may be offering some comments here in a few minutes. I also would like to thank Mark Kisselbach, Peter Menser, and the rest of the Planning and Development Department for their assistance. They've been working with us for a long time on this, and they're always courteous and helpful, and we're extremely appreciative of that. I also want to acknowledge Mark Klaus of the IDE Company, Don Anbar, and Mike Samuels and the ANDEV team for not only listening to some of our concerns, but doing their best to address them. So thank you, gentlemen. Moving forward, I'd like to offer 3 specific comments that will be actually kind of on a global level, but in addition to what maybe David has to say and what other homeowners might want to offer. First, the ANDEV group was good enough to include in their design a 4 to 6 foot berm with plantings on the top of the berm at the property line. And we just want to make sure that there's follow through with this. We understand that the height will be determined by how the water surface management plan, unfolds. Second, we'd like to have a copy of the executed access agreement with the adjacent property owner. And finally, and probably not to anyone's surprise, the ANDEV group has assured us that the surface water management plan, will meet all codes and requirements and will protect, indeed protect Indian Lakes. And we fully appreciate this. But I think from a belt and suspenders perspective, we want to make sure that we're absolutely protected going into the future. And this has become an especially important issue for us, given the increased precipitation in the last few years. I think all have come to understand that the 1% chance per year for the 100-year flood is not necessarily the new norm. So we would ask that ANDAV work with us and share their hard data so that we can just, from a belt and suspender standpoint again, be assured going forward that we're well protected and we can double check, if you will, this extremely important issue to us. I think that concludes my remarks for now. I think I will defer to Mr. Rorgan, who may have some additional detail and some thoughts on maybe how we might be able to accomplish some of this. So thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to comment.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, I'm getting to the next person here. So our next person is Kevin. It's just identified as Kevin. So Kevin, be sure to unmute yourself and give the signal, and you officially have the ability to speak.
Thank you. I am Kevin Rorigan, as Joe Pavona was just alluding to, with the Loomis Law Firm, 124 West Allegan Street, Suite 700 in Lansing, 48933. I want to thank Joe for his kind words regarding Jack Davis. I'm sure nobody will be surprised to hear me say I really wish I wasn't here tonight. Jack was a mentor, and I was proud to call him my partner for over 15 years. So, but he would want us to move forward. That's definitely for sure, and so we will. I would just, on behalf of the Indian Lakes Estates Homeowners Association, just want to amplify just some of the points that Joe made so eloquently. With regard to the berm on the east side, and the Homeowners Association is very much in favor of this, and we appreciate the property owners and the applicant are including this as part of their development plans. I do think that it would be so that we can ensure that this stays part of the plans going forward, that it would be helpful if the Planning Commission to consider making that berm a condition on approval of the special use permit. And I think that would be a reasonable condition on approval here as well. Similarly, with the emergency access road as it's currently proposed coming off of the cul-de-sac and going through the lodges, we're very much, the Homeowners Association is very much in favor of that as emergency access. We would encourage that to be, and we know that at a minimum they have to have an executed access agreement in order to get a building permit. So I'm sure that they're working on that. And as Mr. Pavona said, we would very much like to receive a copy of that access agreement with the lodges, just so that that's something that my clients can satisfy themselves that makes sense and works. We agree that that's the appropriate place for an emergency access road in this development. And then finally, of course, with regard to the stormwater management and recognizing that a lot of the details of the stormwater management plan are going to come out in a site plan review stage. We appreciate that, but I do want to emphasize, and I think it's important from my client's perspective to emphasize for the Planning Commission and for the developers as well, who, as Joe said, and as I understand, have been extremely accommodating and extremely cooperative, and we certainly thank them for that. But obviously, flooding and excess surface water are significant issues for Indian Lakes Estates homeowners, especially with all the heavy rains we received this spring and have received in recent years. because this is such a significant issue, my clients just want to ensure that this is addressed and want to be able to assure themselves that when a stormwater management plan is adopted, that it will be able, most importantly, that it will be able to handle surface water and not increase the burden on my clients' neighborhood and their homes. I would repeat and ask again on behalf of the Indian Lakes Estates homeowners that the applicant and the developer share their stormwater data and calculations with us, so that we be offered an opportunity to assure ourselves that their plan, when it's developed, will offer sufficient protection for the neighborhood. As Joe said, they've been very cooperative and helpful to this point, and I'm sure that they will continue to be so. Just those are the issues that are significant to my clients, and we hope that the Planning Commission and the development team will continue to take my clients' concerns into account, and we're sure that they will. Thank you and appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We have.
So the
Members of the
next
public?
person on my list is Joe Zimmerman. So Joe, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Be sure to unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Joe Zimmerman at 4715 Mohican Lane. My property backs up to a great deal of empty space there between, or we call it the Narrows on Sequoia Drive. And I'd like to express my biggest concern is obviously the water. We've seen water creeping up. We also see evidence of lots of trees that have died from increased water levels. Speaking to neighbors, anecdotal evidence of water increasing over the years as other developments were going up and the trees back there becoming dead from that. 2 weeks ago when we had those large rains, I took a quadcopter drone up to take some aerial footage of how far the water stretched. And I haven't yet overlaid the video from that to where this development would be going, but if I had to take a guess, the water level goes right up to the middle of their parking lot, and I just don't know if I trust some of the decisions being made to say, oh yeah, well, we'll take care of the water. I think that any water directed south from this new development is likely to cause a further problem on Sequoia. I took pictures of the water level markers over the course of a week during those rains, and I watched the water level markers be completely submerged. You couldn't see them anymore. The water at the drain, there's a street drain, a couple of them there. Water was actually covering the drain, and we're at the point where another inch of water and our street's going to be completely covered. I know that's happened in the past, and I just don't think that we can use any more water here, not even a drop. I'd like to echo seeing a lot of the wildlife mentioned. We see that here too. The pileated woodpecker was quite special to see in our backyard. I think there's a lot of concerns here. 10 acres of land being taken from the animals and for drainage. It's a shame to see. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your comment. Anyone else looking to provide public remarks at this time? Steve, do you have anyone on the phone?
There are no phone calls, sir.
And there's no one else in our
See any other
attendees.
hands up? Okay, we'll give everyone one last moment to weigh in. Seeing none, we'll move on to Planning Commission discussion. So we will go ahead and open up the floor to planning commissioners who have items to discuss. Commissioner Richards.
I am unmuted, right?
Yep.
Okay. So one thing I recall a conversation about this ordinance change, and I think at least myself thought about this property as we were looking at that ordinance. And I know one of the concerns was the height of the buildings and its proximity to the single family residential. And so I guess one positive that I see here is that the higher, the 4-story buildings, if I have it right, are the furthest away from the property line. And essentially it looks like a 2-story building is the closest. So certainly the developer and the folks that are proposing this project were listening, from that vantage point. So I think that's a positive. The other thing, in terms of the water issue, stormwater, I think that the kind of the proof of what is being proposed and the impact is really going to be more of a site plan issue when they actually get into their proposal for how to handle the water. But I do share a concern that this is a high water area, and I think that assuming this project goes forward, really want to take a very close look and a hard look. And I think the video that the last gentleman said he had of pictures, I think might go a long way in making some approximations of what could happen in a worse flooding situation. So that being said, I think this certainly looks like a quality project and something I probably can support.
Thank you, Commissioner Richards. I saw Commissioner Clark next.
Yes. Can anyone clarify, was it 2008 that this project was originally being proposed, or was it 2018?
I can provide some background on that. So what was mentioned was a rezoning back in 2008 that tied, I think it was 80 acres together as it was rezoned, and then there was conditioned on development as an MUPUD. So that's basically all the, it's really difficult. I don't have anything I can show you right now. At the next meeting I can, but essentially what it was they rezoned a lot some areas of land in that around there, conditioned on development as an MUPUD. So I'm trying to think of the last thing you saw. The Planning Commission saw the development of a building next to where the LCC East campus is. I believe it was last year. Amber, you might not have been on at that time, but so any project in the area that has to go through the MUPUD ordinance. In this case, this parcel is to the east of that. It was not included in that rezoned area, so it doesn't have that same condition. But overall, the Hannah Plaza properties are all under this rezoning. So any development over there has to be using the MUPUD ordinance.
Any other planning commissioners with comments or questions? Commissioner McConnell.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a couple of issues and questions I wanted to raise. I'd also be interested in understanding more about the drainage and what's expected and what we believe to 100-year flood to mean these days. If I understand, I've heard in the past that prior phases of development on the broader property to the west, there was a stormwater management that ended up in a redesign, and that might be worth hearing more about to understand how this new system will interact with what's there. My other set of questions were around transportation. And I was curious what the expectations of the applicant are in terms of how the residents will be getting around, both within the development, but more importantly, outside of the development. I saw some mention of access to transit, public transit. As far as I can tell, that the proposed development is about a mile from the nearest CATA bus stop, and if I'm not mistaken, CATA has not yet figured out a way to service the lodges. But it looks to me like food shopping is about 2 miles away for Foods for Living, Whole Foods, and there are electric carts that can travel those sorts of distances on like 7-foot township pathways. So I'm curious what the thinking there is on the applicant's part. And also I noticed that the applicant is planning more parking than the minimum required in the ordinance, and I'm curious to hear more about that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any representative of the applicant who'd like to answer some of those questions? I don't know if Mr. Samuels can do that or can refer us to someone else.
Right. Well, let's. I didn't know if you wanted me to respond to each one, or if you wanted me to wait until everybody was done. For water management, I will ask Jeff Keyes to comment. But insofar as transportation is concerned, we provide transportation for anybody who needs it. The facility itself has transportation vans, and provides I don't know, whatever shopping needs they have, or medical needs, etc. In addition, the independent living people can have cars. That's why there's so many parking spaces. They can and will have some cars, not as many as you might expect, but if they are truly independent and free to utilize their vehicles, fine. But we provide transportation for anybody who needs it. Can we unmute Jeff Keyes?
Yeah, Jeff is on available and he's allowed to talk.
Thank you. Back on stormwater, it's, we have, or the drain office has design standards. So we have to follow those. At this point, they have not talked about raising or increasing anything as far as the 100-year floodplain is. It would be as far as the amount of water that's going to drop on the ground in 24 hours. I'm not aware of any redesign on detention over there, but even since the lodges went in, the 2 phases of the lodges where there's detention along the drain on both of those and detention out front along Hannah, the standards have changed even since then. And now there's some other requirements, and one of the requirements is hold water and retain it, which means you're keeping it on site. You want it to go infiltrate into the ground and you're not releasing it. So we work with that. We work with rain gardens. We work with, it's a perforated standpipe is for the 3 stages to clean the water. Like I say, then the 2-year 24-hour, that's what we try to retain on site. And then it's a 100-year detention, and that's, you slow it down so you're releasing at the same rate, so you're not increasing downstream. So I'm back to, at this point, it's our design guidelines are what the drain office has. If we can't meet those design guidelines, then we don't have a project. So that's my job. And, I look forward to the site plan. I look forward to, hopefully, we can help the situation. And not, I can't hurt it at all because that's right in the rules, but we'll do what we can to help. And we'll work right with the drain office. So any more questions?
I may also, when somebody mentioned the berm before, and the berm will be part of this project. There's no question about that. The only thing that remains to be determined is how high it may be and where exactly it gets located, because there's also a natural tree line, and I don't know if it's a natural tree line or if it's tree line that were planted by the people whose houses border the property. But to the extent that there's a tree line on our property, we will try to preserve those trees. There may be conflicts between building a berm and preserving those trees, but to the extent that we can, we will preserve both. We'll both preserve the trees that are there, the mature trees, and then of course we'll do the plantings on the berm.
Thank you very much. I see Commissioner Cordell's been waiting patiently.
Yes, thank you. Relating to the landscape, I was looking at L1, the landscape plan, and I was just like, honestly struggling with trying to read the size of the print. I wanted to encourage as much tree preservation as possible for this site. Looking at some of the plans, you know, a lot of the trees that are near, when we see pictures of the elevations and so forth, it looks like the site's fairly well cleared. So I'm just encouraging as much preservation of mature trees as possible. The other issue, we were talking a little bit about transportation, and I understand that the residents have a shuttle, but there are two other types of people who would visit the site, and that's the employees and visitors of residents there. And are they left pretty much to driving to the site then? Is there bus service along Hagedorn that might connect with, might help to serve this area? Can anyone address that question of how we can get employees and visitors to this development?
Obviously, I can't answer for the township or the county who provides public transportation, but it is quite often the case that when you have a significant development such as this, that the township, that the public transportation agency will add a stop specifically for that reason. I cannot promise that, and I can't specifically predict it, but I do know from experience that that is often the case. That's about the only way I can answer it. I don't know if anybody in the township has the proper procedure to initiate something like that.
This is another question maybe you could address is, I think I heard you say earlier, you're not only a developer of these facilities, but also you operate or you manage them. Was that said earlier?
We use an operational partner. We actually have had more than one. We're working with one in Illinois, one in Wisconsin now. We haven't finalized the selection of the operational partner for this project yet. We're the developer.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, if I could ask a follow-up question of staff about the transportation issues.
Mike, can you,
yes,
I'm gonna change the screen sharing thing, if you could remove that.
Oh,
thanks.
There we go.
What's the question, Holly?
I'm not sure what CATA lines are in place now. I understand what the applicant was saying, that sometimes a development of a certain magnitude may drive a bus stop, but in this case, can you address, does anyone know, I mean, of course, we have bus 1 on Grand River, which is a fair distance away. Can anyone address that? Looks like one of our fellow commissioners,
I
Bill
said,
McConnell.
I see Commissioner.
Yeah, the number 2223 route.
Maybe we got.
We okay?
It was distorted, unfortunately, what you were saying.
All right. The number 2223 fixed route goes up and down Hagedorn Road from Mount Hope into campus, Shaw or Wilson, depending on what time frame we're talking about. And that's about 7/10 of a mile from the bridge that goes over the culvert that links this new plan development to the prior phases of the lodges. So it's a bit of a hike. And there was discussion when the lodges was being proposed about access to public transit. And my understanding was there were negotiations with CATA, but that for whatever reason, they didn't end up with CATA service to those. And there are now private buses that go onto campus to bring the students from the lodges into central campus. And there may also be other bus services there. Maybe this development pushes the potential ridership over a threshold. There is new management at CATA since that prior development was made, and they have altered routes. They're looking at different types of buses. So it might be most appropriate at this point to ask that when we see this again, if the applicant has the opportunity to reach out to CATA and at least open that line of discussion so that we know it's there, or I don't know, maybe take it to the Transportation Commission. But it seems kind of unfortunate from a regional perspective to have competing bus services up and down Hannah Boulevard.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from Planning Commission members? I don't see any at the moment. I did have one question. It was related to something that was brought up during public comment. One of the members of the public had mentioned the study, the wildlife study, I think it was. And I noticed this as well as we were reviewing our packet, was from 2016. And they also rightly pointed out that the study was done in November, I guess, of 2015. And so it's more of a procedural question, I think, for Peter, in terms of, how long are these studies considered good for, given that a lot can change in a few years on a given piece of property.
So, all right, thanks. I'll do my best to answer it. And Director Kieselbach is on. He may want to supplement anything I say. The township doesn't have at least ordinance standards for a natural feature study. We have a little bit of guidance in a couple different sections of our ordinance in terms of what should be included in the report, but we don't have a date that they're valid for. Like, for example, the wetland delineation, they're good for 3 years. And if it's 3 years later, we make them redo it. But we don't have that standard for a natural features study.
Thank you. Any other questions or comment? Commissioner Clark.
Is there a way to maybe get the environmental commission's point of view or perspective on this, since we have questions about drainage and wetlands, and then now we have questions about wildlife?
So I can answer. So drainage, Jeff Kais mentioned, let's see, I gotta be diplomatic. This is not to question, the environmental commission is all very talented people. I don't know if they have a specific drainage expert, but we rely on an engineer. So the engineer is a licensed, it's a licensed position. They are gonna have to follow the drain office standards. Wetlands, we have the delineation report and it was verified by the township's consultants. The real challenge and I heard someone else mention Transportation Commission, I think the real challenge is the delay in sending this plan out to other public bodies, because they don't meet again now until the Environmental Commission, at least until July 1. and they may be prepared to make a recommendation on the project at that one meeting. They may want to talk about it longer. Now we're into August. They're not, you know, part of our official review process as it is now. So certainly the Planning Commission can consider something like that, but I guess I would ask you to also think about the time element to this process.
Well, let me, as a follow-up to that, Peter, we could theoretically share this proposal, the plans and documents that are in our packet tonight, with the members of that commission. They take a look at it, and even if it's not a formal review, could we not?
So the question is, couldn't we just share it with the members of the Planning Commission and ask for their individual responses?
I'm saying if time is a factor, and I agree that, we don't want to get too far behind and cause unnecessary delays, could ask for informal recommendations, since we do, as you mentioned, they're all, qualified members of that commission. I mean, I could offer their individual opinion.
I mean, I just think the challenge with that is, much like the Planning Commission, I would think the Planning Commission really needs to speak as a group and know what one individual member speaks, on their own. I would find it challenging to ask them to individually chime in on these projects.
Just trying to offer a creative solution. I saw Commissioner Cordell's hand, and then Commissioner McConnell and Commissioner Trezise. Commissioner Cordell, I think you're muted.
Ollie, you're on mute.
Members of the Environmental Commission, like the rest of the public, can weigh in on this issue. I guess they could add their public remarks or written remarks in time for the June 22nd meeting. They don't have to act as a body, but they can act individually, just like other members of the public.
Yeah, I think the only difference between what you're suggesting and what I was suggesting was that we send out a communique to them to and list that feedback. But yeah, I agree. They could, assuming that they are, as I expect, interested members of the public, they're more than welcome to reach out to us personally, even without that kind of communication. Commissioner McConnell, then Commissioner Trezise.
I'm happy either way. If we haven't already taken action on this before the next Environmental Commission meeting, it would naturally be part of my report as liaison. And if the commission chooses at that point to offer some comments and they're still germane, I would they would get forwarded by staff. So, but yeah, since there are no regulated wetlands, this would not normally come to the Environmental Commission. Once that determination that there is no impact on a regulated wetland as part of the plan, it wouldn't come to us normally.
Thank you. Commissioner Trezise?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. We don't see a lot of these environmental or studies like this, and I'm wondering if it's a requirement for this type of development because of its size, or is it something that they just prepared to support?
So the natural feature study is a requirement of the special use permit submittal. Okay. We haven't seen a lot of new builds. I think it's probably the reason you don't see a lot of these plans.
Okay, the other question is, and I think it's, if we were to refer this to the Environmental Commission or another group, they don't have anything more than what we've looked at. I don't believe they've got the time or possibly the expertise to go do their own survey. So they're going to be looking at the same documentation we have and responding to it. I think we'd be better off if we thought it was advisable to put a request for an updated study. rather than try to send the same thing, 4.5-year-old document to a group to look at and see if they agree with it.
Thank you. Director Kieselbach, I see you trying to weigh in there.
Yeah, thank you. Remember again that this still has to go through site plan review. I don't really want to slow down the process with this since it's been there since March, but certainly if the Environmental Commission wants to provide comments and for the site plan review, because again, we're going to have a public hearing and the public is welcome to look at those site plans when the more details are available, that we can take those comments at that time and not slow down this process.
Thank you. I suppose it's also worth mentioning that will go from us through board approval. And so the Environmental Commission between now and so there would have an opportunity to at least, would it not? At least goes to the board right now. Commissioner Primo.
I guess an observation I would make, probably 70% of the development proposals that come to us have some kind of adverse effect on wildlife. And you know, the flora and fauna. We hear that a lot, and the question always becomes weighing and balancing. And I don't think that this is a lot different than many of the other proposals. And I would agree with Mark that we need to, I think it's a proposal that we need to make a decision on and move forward with, and trust the process beyond us. That's my.
Okay. Commissioner McConnell.
Would it be a fair compromise to ask the applicant if there's a particular reason why the initial survey was done in the wintertime? It doesn't seem like that's necessarily ideal. Was there a time constraint at that time that we don't face now? Or, I mean, if there's I guess that would be my question. Is there a rationale for looking at a 4.5-year-old plan that was done at a less than ideal time?
Well, the real answer to that question is that was done for another developer. We did not do that. We were able to employ it because nothing really has changed on that site since then, and it wasn't required that we update it. But you know, you're looking at a 10-acre piece out of a 60-acre area, most of which is being completely undisturbed. So I don't think that we really are going to have any significant environmental impact. I don't know what your environmental commission evaluates or how their studies are done. And to be honest with you, I don't know how long it might take to get an update on the study. I don't. We could find out, but it will only delay this. I'm not going to refuse to do it, but I don't think it's necessary.
Thank you very much. The only other thing that I was looking to make mention of was there was a discussion from the gentleman who was the head, Mr. Pona, that they were hoping for us to approve this with the condition that the berm be constructed. And I was hoping to get a sense of the Planning Commission on whether or not we wanted to include that condition in the approval of this SUP. I see some nodding heads. I don't see any shaking heads. Okay. So I think that's, the first bit of feedback that we'd provide to Peter as he's crafting his resolution. If there's any other comments or questions on this from Planning Commission members, now would be the time. And if not, we'll go to straw poll. I see Commissioner Cordell's hand.
I'm sorry about that. It seems like in theory, a berm is a good idea.
You muted, Holly.
Pardon?
You're good, Holly.
Okay. I'm just curious how that might affect the tree line. Something to keep in mind. Would you end up tearing out trees in order to put a berm, or not being really well versed on the lot? But that's all that's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Richards?
One thing about the berm, if you notice on a site plan, there were some vehicles that came around the east side of the building, relatively close. I mean, the closest they're going to be to the adjacent property, and having a berm would minimize headlights, night lights into the adjacent property. So I think from that standpoint, you could argue that a berm is actually, it could be better than trees if you're looking at the low level light penetration.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions or comments on that? Seeing none, we'll move into a straw poll on this. Once again, this is not an official vote. This is just guidance for Principal Planner Menzer on how we plan to act at the next meeting, and so he can craft a resolution for this item. So, Commissioner McConnell. Looks like a yes, I support.
Yeah.
Commissioner Primo. Commissioner Primo, I couldn't hear you, sorry. Yes, okay. Commissioner Cordell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury.
Yes, I support.
Commissioner Richards.
Yes, support.
Commissioner Clark.
Support.
Commissioner Trezise.
Support, and I want to compliment the developer for working so closely with the neighborhood to come up with a plan that seems to address most of their issues.
And the chair supports and echoes Commissioner Trezise's comments. So with that, we will close the public hearing at 9:08 p.m. Thank you very much to everyone who came and spoke on this matter.
Thank you all very much from the development team. We very much appreciate your work, your input. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 6D. This is changed from our paper packets if you're just joining us. That is rezoning 20010 Ho Cho, rezone approximately 4.67 acres located at 5654 Okemos Road from RR Rural Residential to RAA Single Family Low Density. And we will we'll open the public hearing at 9:09 p.m. and turn things back over to Principal Planner Menzer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. And members of the Planning Commission, thanks for your patience tonight. I know this is probably a challenging situation, but we're getting through it pretty well, I think. Okay, so this is a request to rezone a property at 5654 Okemos Road from rural residential to RAA, which is our single family low district or low density zoning district. the first thing I want to do is check to see if I can find, and forgive my kind of fumbling through this, but I'm looking for the applicant, and I do see a Cho in here, so I'm going to, I see a hand, so thank you for that. I'm going to promote you to a panelist for now, but I'm going to hold off on having you speak. Let me get through my spiel, and then we'll get you on there. But thanks for identifying yourself. Appreciate that. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my packet here.
I just unmuted it. Go ahead. Okay, Young Cho. I bought this property in 1995. When I moved in 1992, East Lansing for my ministry, this property have 3 small unit rental, and now I'm retired after 26 years ministry. I'm going to separate this property 2 different sections. One of my renter tenant really interested. He's going to leave and rent another 2 units. It might good chance to split and sell it to him about 3/4 acre and leave about 4 acre for my future retirement plan. Also, I look at it, my west side and my south side, they are all RAA zoning. That's why I asked to Meridian Township rezoning to the RR2 RAA. That's what I requested.
Okay, thanks. That was the applicant. So I'm going to put him on mute for now, and we're going to go. So let me go back to what I originally was planning on doing. Okay, can people see the PowerPoint?
We can.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it's once I go to this screen, I can't see any of you, so it's kind of, and then plus I'm in a room alone talking out loud, which is just an odd thing. So, all right, so tonight's public hearing for this rezoning on Okemos Road. It's a 4.6 acre parcel on the east side of Okemos Road, just south of Hazlet Road, north of Raby. Request is to go from RR rural residential to RAA. Hopefully everybody at home and in the Planning Commission, you can find the meeting packet. Everything I'm going over is there. We've been through 2 public hearings tonight, so I'm not going to go through all this again. But here's a map of the area. It's compared to surrounding properties, a large parcel. It's 4.67 acres. You can see it's in red here, just north of Raby Road. Just to the north of this parcel is the development with a shopping center that years ago had a 7-Eleven, but now there's a karate studio and a gym and a salon, and soon to be a medical marijuana provisioning center, if you remember from a couple months ago. And then the Red Cedar Surgery Center south of that, and then we have this property. As the applicant noted, I think ultimately what they want to do is divide this property. So it's currently zoned RR that requires 200 feet minimum of lot frontage. So it has 280 feet of lot frontage on Okemos Road right now. So a land division is not an option as it's currently zoned. It's RR, so it's 200. So obviously you can't get 2 lots out of that. But we'll get into more details here soon. I just wanted to give you a little background. So this is just a summary of the request. Proposed as RAA. Rezoning process, we've gone over this. The notices have been sent out. Planning Commission's advisory on a rezoning, and the board's the final decision maker. Currently on use, there's a 2,500 square foot 2-story house on the property built in 1875. Future land use map shows it in the R2 category. It's 0.5 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre. So both the current and the proposed zoning are consistent with the future land use map. now that we have these ranges of density. So you can see the future land use map there, R2, and pretty much all residential uses surrounding are R2, and then you see that commercial designation at the corner of Okemos and Hazlitt. So really, what is the difference between these zoning districts? It's all about the minimum size of the lot and the uses that are allowed. In this case, the uses would remain the same. It's single family residential in both instances. However, the lot sizes are different. So in RR, the minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet, so just under 1 acre, and then a minimum lot frontage of 200 feet. RAA is significantly smaller than that. It's at 13,500 square feet for minimum lot area and 90 feet of lot width. So zoning, you can see this is RR, and the surrounding area is zoned RR to the east and to the north, and you have commercial zoning and some RAA to the south. You'll see just below, along Okemos Road, just south of Raby, starts some RAA zoning. The table that's on the screen right now just shows the differences between the two districts. As you'll see, the RAA requires smaller setbacks, smaller lot area, smaller lot width. It allows a greater lot coverage and the same height of building. So there are wetlands on this property. This is a rezoning. There's nothing proposed. And even if the applicant, let's say the rezoning gets approved, the applicant does go to divide the lot and potentially build another home there in the future. Our wetland map shows that there are wetlands in the area. So what we would do as planning staff is require the wetlands to be delineated and or verified by the township's consultant. And I went over that during the ANDEV public hearing, that general process for wetlands. But if a house was proposed on the lot, on a new future lot, that would have to be vetted, examined and vetted before we would consider a permit. So potential future development, what I was looking at is what could happen. So the applicant gave you, I think, a pretty general idea of what he probably has in mind for the lot. Now keep in mind, just because the applicant may say one thing, we the Planning Commission really can consider any potential future use of this property. So in my mind, what the options are is a division using the land division process. So that's a process through our office. The current RR zoning won't allow land division because the lot would be, the lot minimum frontage is too big. But if it was RAA, now forget that there's an existing house there, but you could potentially get up to 2 new lots. So a total of 3 lots at 90 feet of frontage each. It's good, because it has 280 feet of frontage. Now, in that scenario is one potential option, because I mean, even if the house was there, so the house is there now, you may be able to get another lot. If that house were demoed and the site were cleared, maybe they could get 2 more. The other option here, and I think this is a fairly far-fetched option, is to replat. And I may have to come back to you with exactly how that would happen, but they would have to try to replat, and it just wouldn't be that piece. It would be for this entire property. I think this is a very unlikely scenario to replat this area and potentially build a public road to serve some future development on those lots. The rezoning review criteria, Planning Commission and the board, we're going to look at all the uses by right and by special use permit in both the current and proposed zoning districts, and then the reasons for rezoning listed on page 2 of the rezoning application, and you'll see that's in the meeting packet, along with the responses from the applicant to those reasons for rezoning. The uses allowed in both districts, proposed or existing and proposed, are single family houses by right, and then there's non-residential uses in residential zoning districts, like we talked about with the last public hearing. Those are by special use permit. Those are such things as clinics, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, churches, or schools. So what's next? Planning Commission will consider this item, potential action, at the next meeting on June 22, Monday night, 7 o'clock. So between now and then, no additional notices or letters are going to go out. And depending on how the discussion goes following this presentation, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what the Planning Commission will be considering in terms of action. So as always, I'm available to answer any questions should you have any. And the applicant, now we know, is on the line as well.
Thank you, Peter. I know we did hear from the applicant a little bit at the beginning. Was there anything else you'd like to present at this time? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will open discussion up for members of the public. Just a reminder, if you'd like to speak on this topic, you can raise your hand if you're attending the Zoom meeting using the raise hand function. Or if you'd like to call in, you can call us at 517-349-1232. I do see one hand at present. So Peter, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep.
No.
So the name I've got, I think it's Kathy Smith. I'm gonna, you're on with us, and be sure to unmute yourself. And thanks for calling.
Everyone that comments are limited to 3 minutes on this topic and this topic only. And if you could start by stating your full name and address for the record.
Actually, it's Kate Smith, and I'm not Kate Smith. I'm Sam Smith, her husband. She's the first one to zoom in, so now it's got my name. I live on the other side of Raby Road from this proposed division. I've spoken with a number of the neighbors, and we've got a lot of concerns. You heard a couple of them from the beginning. But first of all, I know I have 3 minutes, so I'd like to say that the zoning is actually quite inconsistent with all of the contiguous properties. The applicant has suggested that it's consistent with other zoning in the area, but in fact, every contiguous property that's not commercial and not across the street on the other side of Okemos Road is a RR zoning. And I don't see that the applicant has offered much in the way of reason why this should change. In fact, it would seem to me that he might be able to get what he's looking for, which he says in his application is an additional house. He might be able to do that with an SUP or a zoning variance, I would think, to get back there so he could have an additional house. If you do rezone it, then as you all know, this opens it up for greater development. Whether or not he could fit a whole lot of other property or residential units on there is a question that I don't have an answer to. But it does open it up to more development. Another point that Mr. Primo did not speak highly of this, the loss of wildlife habitat, but that is in fact a factor. There's a fair amount of wildlife back there, deer and other, and we've had a pileated woodpecker around here that I think is nesting back there. I can't really follow him; he's quicker than I am. But that there would be an effect on that, and the way the water runs off that property now, I know that you say that you'll have to look at the wetlands again if you do rezone it. But the way it runs off now, if it's blocked up in any way, it'll run into the people across the street, the Coles pole barn. So there's that problem. And then with all due respect, something somewhat irrelevant, I guess, to the intellectual exercise of deciding a zoning issue, that is not really a single property, a single family home. There are a number of people living there and have been over the course of the years. Kids in and out, different families. So I don't think he's actually used it that way, and he has not kept that property up. If in fact he would keep that property up and go through a variance to get another home there, I don't think anybody would have a problem. But the way it stands, we oppose it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And I will mention to members of the public, please address all your comments to the board as a whole, not to any individual member, if you would, please.
I only spoke to Mr. Primo because he commented last time. It was not really directed at him. I'm sorry if I suggested that he was insensitive to that. I don't mean it that way at all.
I do see another hand in the.
We do have a caller on the line as well.
Okay, Stephen, let's do the caller then, and we'll go to Rick next.
Please state your name and address for the public record, please.
Sure. My name is Jeff Cole. I live at 2090 Raby Road, Hazlet, Michigan. And just wanted to make it known that my wife and I are strongly opposed to the rezoning. And some of the reasons are the woods and everything behind us. It's a narrow strip, and it's a natural buffer from Hazlet Road for us. And the other thing is the water runoff. All of our water goes back that way. And if they're allowed to do anything back there, whether it be a road or build or alter it in the terrain in any way, it's going to divert waters somewhere else. And it's going to back up and potentially flood our place more. So that's why we oppose it. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then I've got Rick K. Here comes Rick K. And you'll have to unmute yourself, Rick.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rick Klingensmith is my name. I'm at 2030 Raby Road, which is to the second property on the east side of the aforementioned property. But I'm here, I just want to echo many of the other comments. That property is not maintained. The woods behind it is not really maintained at all. It has been left to grow, and people around the property itself have to trim trees and work at that. But my property has a short swale. You heard from Steve Besdick before. I'm his next door neighbor. That swale, any water runoff there, any additional runoff that potentially part of that comes through my property and onto his. So the lake could potentially back up to mine as well. And I don't really want that to happen. And I want to prevent any additional runoff from going down through mine as well, and cause issues with ground maintenance. So thank you for your consideration, and we'll be looking forward to hearing your decision.
Thank you very much. Stephen, anyone else on the phone?
Negative, sir.
Okay, I don't see any other hands in the Zoom audience here. So we will go ahead and close public remarks and move on to Planning Commission discussion. Any Planning Commissioners wishing to discuss this matter? Commissioner Cordell.
Just verification. I'm looking at the zoning map or the for this property. It's page 3 of the staff report, and so we have the northwest corner above this property, which is C1. The properties that are to the northeast, are those double R, Peter?
Yes. So I can show the screen again if we need it, but if you look in your packets at the zoning map, the subject parcel is RR, it's ringed in red. And then the parcels, you'll see there's C1 zoning just to the north of that. And then everything else surrounding that RR is all also RR.
So
there's
to
a label.
the north, okay.
Yep, to the northeast, so all those long skinny lots that face on Hazlet Road, those are all zoned RR.
And directly to the east and
Yep,
to
those are
the
all
south.
RR. Yeah, there's a label to the west. I could have put another label there, but apparently didn't. So
Okay, that clarifies it for me a great deal. I could see that there's RR across the road, across Okemos Road, but I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions? Or, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just, it really helps me, look at this because, it discourages me from changing it. The zoning. Because it's surrounded on 3 sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Richards, I see your hand.
Yeah, when I look at this property, it's a unique property in terms of, what can you do with that? There's probably some history on why, the lots facing Raby Road that are to the south they didn't get that property because that would make some sense, because if you try to put a house all the way in towards the east end of that, you're basically looking at 2 backyards, and I mean it would be kind of a strange situation, but yet it's all one piece of property there. So what can you do with it? One thing I guess potentially, and I guess I'd have to ask the staff if we have the option of doing this, but can we make that a smaller piece, RAA? And I guess I'd have to actually look and see the wetland situation and how far back that goes. But, to kind of parallel the other side of the street, I mean, that's an option, or potential option is to leave part of it RR, kind of orphaned out there. And the other, part of it that's along Oakland's Road as RA. But, I guess I just kind of scratch my head when I look at that piece of property and try to figure out if I was owning that, what would I do with it? I mean, I know that's not necessarily our problem, but it's what makes the most sense. So I don't know that I have real good answers, but I can see why the owner is looking at options as to what they can do with the property.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, I also sympathize with the applicant here. I know that, looking at this property, it really does seem, it is unusual and atypical. Commissioner Cordell brings up a good point for me about the surrounding zoning. And the reality is that the RAA across the street is really an unusual spot in the middle of what is otherwise a generally RR zone. So my inclination would be not to add to that, but rather to leave it as RR. I also think that the answers provided in the application for the reasons for rezoning did not help the applicant's case here much. We take those answers very seriously when weighing any decisions on such matters. And if there is an issue, especially in that top section where there really wasn't any information provided as to why the current zoning is unreasonable, I would humbly ask the applicant to consider providing additional consideration before we meet and take action on that. As it stands, I personally will likely not be supporting this zoning change, but that's not, I'm happy to change my mind if good sufficient reasons are provided between now and the next time we meet. Commissioner Trezise.
Yeah, I have the same problem. It is a strange piece of property, but assuming that some sort of a planned unit development would be very difficult to get in there and may not fit at all. If you divided this into 3 lots, they'd each be 90 feet wide and it looks like 1,000 feet deep, which is a very strange building site. everything else is RR, I would be hard pressed to rezone this RAA at this point without some sort of concrete plan that could show how it'd be used.
Any other questions or comments from Planning Commission members? Commissioner McConnell.
I think I heard in the public comments some questions about drainage, and maybe this is a question for staff. Once something is proposed for that site, any potential negative impacts would be considered at that point. Is that correct?
Hey, yeah, you're correct. It's much like what we talked about with the ANDEV development. If a house is proposed here, they're going to have to go through the same rigorous review commercial development would go through. So they have to get their drain office permits, they get a building permit through the township. Any wetland would have to be verified, identified, verified by the township consultant. So all of those protocols would be in place should development be proposed in the future.
Thank you, Peter. Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, just wanted to mention, because this is a rezoning. The previous one we talked about was a special use permit. One of the differences, I guess I just point this out to the applicant, and I'm maybe assuming that staff says something to folks on rezonings, but the applicant has the ability to condition a rezoning to a certain plan or a certain use, whereas the Planning Commission cannot set that. All we can do is approve or deny, and this is a recommendation to the Township Board, what you are requesting. But as the applicant, I just want to make sure the applicant understands that you can modify your request to say, this is exactly what we want to do. And then we would be voting on that. And that is the only thing you can do if, in fact, you propose a specific use as part of the rezoning request. Now, we cannot, as a Planning Commission, require you to condition your request. Only you, as the applicant, can modify your application, or if it was your original submittal. I just want to make sure the applicant is aware of that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from Planning Commission? Okay. Then we will move on to our straw poll. So in this case, we'd ask that you indicate whether you are supporting the rezoning or opposing the rezoning as it is put before us, so that Peter can create a resolution for our next meeting. We'll start with Commissioner McConnell.
Yeah, I would not support the current request without a clear idea of what's going to come.
Okay, Commissioner Primo.
I would agree. I'd like to see more detail of the owner's intent. So I would not support it at this point.
Okay. Commissioner Cordell.
As it's presented, I couldn't support it.
Okay. Commissioner Shrewsbury.
I'm in agreement with other commission members. I just don't feel like I know enough about it to be supportive, but I think with more detail that might make me feel more comfortable with what was being proposed, particularly if it alleviated some of the concerns that the neighboring residents had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, cannot support it this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
Not support.
Okay, Commissioner Trezise.
Not support at this point.
Thank you. And the chair would oppose at this time. So Peter, I think you've got two drafts for us, and if the applicant wishes to provide any additional materials or thoughts in the meantime, wish to offer any changes to their proposal, I'm sure that they are at their liberty to do so.
Thank you very
All right, and with that, we will close the public hearing at 9:39 p.m. and we will move on to the next item of our agenda. And that item is number 7, unfinished business, none. Item number 8, other business, none. Item number 9A, Township Board update. We'll hand things over to Principal Planner Menser once again.
Hi again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks everybody for sticking this out. I know this has been a long meeting. I appreciate your patience and everything that goes with it. So the board Township Board last met on Tuesday, June 2. They met on Zoom like we're doing tonight. There were a variety of things on the agenda, including continued coronavirus task force updates. The EDC did a business relief grant program. The township's 2019 audit was on the agenda, which went really well. The township received high marks for that. But planning related, the request, it's called Pine Village from Hudson Senior Living, and the Planning Commission saw this plan many times. It was on for action, and after a couple tweaks over the last couple of meetings, the board did approve the MUPUD and special use permit for Pine Village. So the next step in that process is site plan review, and we're hoping to work with them to get them applied soon, and so we get that project off and rolling. There are no specific planning related items on the board's next agenda. I mean, there's stuff like brownfield plan, and we've got a liquor license request, but nothing that the Planning Commission has seen lately. So board meets again on the 16th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any other liaison committee reports to provide to us? I know it's been relatively slow over the last few months. Okay, seeing none. I'll move on to project updates. We have one new application, which is special use permit number 2019-99021, Williams Volkswagen Incorporated, to amend the special use permit for minor adjustment to the size of a building addition to automobile dealership at 2186 Jolly Road. We have 3 site plans received. Do I need to read these, Peter? I'm sorry, I don't know if there's an actual protocol there. Okay, then I will.
No, hold on. Sorry, I'm glad you asked, because you're under no obligation to actually read them. If you just want to refer to them, that's fine. It was kind of like in the past people have done it, but you definitely don't have to.
Okay. Don't get me
I just
wrong.
have to list them on the agenda.
I don't mind monologuing in a short meeting, but we're now into hour 3, so I'm gonna.
Yep, that's just fine.
Okay. So we have 3 site plans received. We have site plans approved, none. So we find ourselves arriving at the last public remarks of the evening. And so I will once again remind folks that they are welcome to raise their hand if they'd like to speak on an issue. If they're in the Zoom meeting, or if they'd like to call in from home, they can reach us at 517-349-1232. So Peter, it looks like we've got a hand.
Yeah, it looks like Kath is back, so.
Kath or Sam?
Oh, that's right, sorry.
It's Sam again, and I just want to apologize. I know that every member of the board is interested in and cares about the environment and things like that. I was being cavalier and referencing an earlier comment made by a member. I did not mean by any stretch of the imagination to actually focus on somebody. It was my fault for being an accident, and I apologize to any member that might feel offended by what I did and the board as a whole. Thanks.
I might say that I'll sleep fine tonight.
Okay, looks like we've got one other hand.
You're muted, Peter.
Peter, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, once I get into a couple screens, I have to go back. I wanted to get Mr. Pavona. He's back on now for public comment.
Thanks, Peter. And just a very brief closing comment here. I want to thank the commission and ANDEV for your continued interest in trying to address our concerns, particularly as they relate to preservation and water. And I also want to acknowledge Commissioner Richards he hit the nail on the head in terms of the comment with the berm and why berm is important to us. You know, obviously we're with everyone else. We'd like to see both trees and berm, but the berm is really important to us. And I just thought I'd make that comment. So thank you all for your continued support.
Thank you very much. Stephen, do we have anyone on the phone? Okay, very good. Then we will close public remarks and we'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner McConnell, seconded by Commissioner Richards. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.
Hey, Scott, hang on. Just, I want to talk to you.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night, thanks.
Got through it, Peter.
Yeah, thanks.